Hey folks, David Stewart here. Time for some more Storycraft, and this week we're going to talk about The Girl Next Door. This is a very, very popular character type, most prominently found in various kinds of comedies, whether they're romantic comedies that are a little bit more focused on the female demographic, or they are, say, buddy comedies more focused on the male demographic, but occurring as part of the B story, which is usually a romance. Very popular. It exists outside of those genres as well, but there's good reasons why it shows up in those kind of light-hearted comedy romance formats, as we hopefully will dig into. Now, I am using this stock photo model again. I used her the other week, and I talked a little bit how she seemed a little bit more accessible, and it seemed like the viewers really liked the way she looked because her pose here was slightly awkward, and that actually is a great visual representation of who the girl next door is. And in fact, when I looked at this woman and all of her stock photos, she has that exact energy just in every single photo. She's not a woman that is made to look like hypersexual or super glamorous. Rather, she has a very honest look, and that is one of the things that encapsulates the girl next door. So I think she's a great visual representation of it, but you can actually achieve these things visually or non-visually outside of the non-visual mediums, like in literature. You can achieve these things by knowing what kind of attributes go into making a girl next door kind of character, and especially how those attributes contrast with another female character that's usually present alongside this character. So usually you see the girl next door present alongside a different kind of character, which would be a more hot chick kind of character. I talked about hot chicks in literature and in movies and stuff last week for Storycraft, and this is really a variation of that, but is in contrast to a character that's designed to be, say, specifically sexual, let's say. So a character that's designed to have a great amount of sexual attractiveness will be posed a certain way to evoke that. For example, this picture, which I used the other week for hot chicks, you notice that her shoulders are turned slightly. That makes them look narrower. Her chest is sticking out, which makes her breasts more pronounced. And that turn of the torso also makes her waist look slimmer. If we look at a more full body picture of a girl, you can see similar things as well. So a photo like this, for instance, it's designed to provoke sexual feelings or lustful feelings, however you want to describe it. She's designed to look like a sexual object in a sense, and the posing has a lot to do with that. The turned hips, so that the hips look really, really wide, as well as the slightly turned shoulders or slightly obscured shoulders to make them look narrower. That tends to accentuate the feminine form, as well as she's putting her shoulders back and sticking her chest out, which is going to make the breasts look more pronounced. So if you want a girl to look more like a girl next door, you can simply pose her with a more natural stance. So those of you who are artists and want to make a woman look more accessible but still be beautiful, the whole thing about the girl next door is that she's not unattractive. Rather, she's attractive but isn't as is not the primary, exciting, exotic sexual interest in a story. So a really natural, relaxed pose with the shoulders kind of forward and the chest not sticking out in like a really pronounced kind of way, that tends to give us that feeling that this woman is accessible, is natural, is normal, is average on some level, but not really average. Now, the way that we see this stuff occur in stories is really centered around this contrast between the two. So what you usually get is a love triangle. Now, I know some of you don't like love triangles, but they're very popular for good reason. They make very compelling stories, particularly in the romantic comedy genres or any kind of romance in general. So if you're writing a romance, a love triangle tends to be a really compelling story device, and there's good reasons for that. The main reason a love triangle, and I'll do a separate video just on love triangles and how to make them really effective. The main thing that makes a love triangle a compelling story device is that the audience has more information than the protagonist. The audience has more information than the protagonist, and that creates dissonance because the protagonist is acting in a way against what the audience wants them to do. So the girl next door plays into this because she is, in contrast to the character who's more like the hot chick, the hypersexualized character. She's more demure, she's less noticeable, she's not unattractive, she's still pretty, but maybe there's things about her appearance that slightly obscure that. You know, she might wear glasses, or she's presented with t-shirts on rather than wearing very revealing clothing or clothing that shows her body off. So she looks very, a little bit more demure, a little bit more fading into the background. But at the same time, the girl next door has all of these other qualities that the storyteller presents to the audience to make the storyteller want the male character and this girl next door character to get together. This is the way this is almost always presented. So the girl next door, she's familiar with the male character. She's nice to the male character. They get along really well. They have mutual interests. They've known each other a long time. They're already in their sphere of friends, but something has maybe prevented them from actually matriculating a real relationship and getting together the way that the audience wants them to get together. And so the hyper attractive hot chick character will be presented as one that's very exotic, very beautiful, but doesn't have the good qualities of the girl next door. The girl next door, maybe she's really good at something. She has a high skill level at something. She's really good at music, or she's a great cook. She has these other qualities that the audience wants the male character to recognize in her and appreciate her for. And indeed, that's usually the arc of these kinds of comedies or these kinds of romance stories, is the male character grows enough to realize that he really should have been with the girl next door all along, and she's the one who has the real the good qualities about her, and she's actually like a hidden gem, and he actually cares much more about her than he does about the attractive character. There's many different ways that you can present that story to come off as really, really effective, but the main one is that you have this contrast between a virtuous girl who's maybe not as beautiful or not as obviously beautiful as the initial sexual interest, but who has more virtue and has just other good qualities about her. She has a good family, things like that. So some ways that you can execute this is you can have the main hot chick character be a little bit flaky, right? She's kind of maybe interested in the male character, but she doesn't really give him the attention he deserves or he wants, or she doesn't maybe show up to a date, or she just doesn't take him seriously. And so we, as the audience, tend to not like her that much. Or she might be very oblivious to things which matter. So you show the girl next door being a character that really understands the male character. They have a great conversation about something that matters to them, whether it's music or art or politics even. And the hot chick, she just doesn't get what they're talking about. So maybe the girl next door and the main character, maybe they're both really into heavy metal or something. I like heavy metal, so I think this is probably something that I would write. And they're both really into, I don't know, Iron Maiden or something. And they have these great conversations about the genre and these arguments about which band is superior to which band. But the hot chick, she likes, she knows who Metallica is. She thinks Metallica is really good. She's on the surface level of a fandom, and so we get kind of annoyed with her only liking the surface level. Or maybe she just doesn't like that at all. She has no interest in that kind of music, or she hates it when the male character listens to Iron Maiden or something like that. She turns off from that, and she only listens to top 40 radio hits. That's all she listens to, or she only listens to like club dance music. Usually that hot chick is presented in the story as being superficial, being shallow, being somebody who maybe has low virtue, who like maybe cheats on men or something like that, and that's always going to turn the audience favor against the protagonist. But one of the things, when I mentioned the reason love triangles work is because there's a difference between the amount of information the audience has and the protagonist has. The audience is automatically sees the virtue of the girl next door. Why doesn't the protagonist? And it's usually because she's familiar. Those things which are familiar are not as exciting or exotic, and you don't realize what you have basically until you lose it. And that's the way that you usually see those stories play out. And you can choose to use these as a B story or as an A story. You could put it in a whole bunch of different formats. But the main thing is that this character comes as a contrast to the other one. Now, I want to make a point here about trying to transfer this character type to a male. It doesn't work the same way. you can't have the boy next door function as well as the girl next door. What ends up happening is, because male and female sexuality is different, the social sexual hierarchy of males and females is different. If you were to cross the genders, if you were to switch the genders, the story comes off completely different from how you would intend it within a romance, which is to say, you will view the man as pathetic. So love triangles and romances that involve two men are very popular when that is directed towards women, because women like to fantasize about multiple men being interested in them and competing over their attention and their affection. But if we were to put it in this kind of format where you have a girl who's a protagonist and she's really interested in the hot guy and the hot guy is very interesting to her, but you have this kind of simping kind of beta male or gamma male hanging around her, wishing that she would recognize his virtue. If only she knew the real him, she would like him. That Virgin kind of character, I talked about this in the Virgin versus Chad video, that character comes off as pathetic. We have a pathos towards him rather than an affection. The girl next door, we have immediate affection for her. We want her to succeed. When we look at a male character in the same position, we tend to look at him as pathetic because males and females operate different in their social spaces. So transferring this to a male character ends up making a male character that I think is fairly unlikable. Now, there's ways that you can have more nerdy characters have this being able to have this thing happen, but it's usually going to be something other than the format that I explained here. If you were to look at, say, American Pie as a comedy, I think I talked about this in the Virgin versus Chad video. You have characters that are literal virgins trying to score with chicks, and one of them is played by Jason Biggs. I don't remember the name of the character, but he's really interested in this foreign exchange student. She's really beautiful. She's very exotic. She's hypersexual. He videotapes her like looking at pornography in his room and goes in to try to have a sexual relationship with her right away. This is all kind of virgin fantasy kind of stuff, but it's the girl that he ends up settling for who ends up being the hypersexual girl. It's kind of a bait and switch there. But the girl next door in that case is the band camp girl. And so she's the one she's not unattractive, but she's there basically to contrast with that foreign exchange student for his affections, and only at the end of the story does he realize she's the real one. And they even have, like, I think in one of the sequels they have it where she's trying to help him get with the attractive girl, which just it's a big tense thing for the audience. The audience, of course, doesn't want that to happen. They want him to end up with the girl next door the entire time. But it's an example of that's really a more male-centered comedy. I think women could probably enjoy it too, but you'll see this in romantic comedies where the protagonist is often the girl next door, and she is maybe interested in this guy, and then they're of course going to be the ones who actually end up together when the attractive woman turns out to be a really bad choice for him. So you see it in both versions there. So that's what I wanted to say about that. My warning, of course, is to beware and not to try to automatically switch the genders. This is something that functions well with a female character, doesn't really function as well as a male character because we tend to view the male as a loser. We don't tend to view a woman as a loser simply because she wears t-shirts and isn't hypersexual. Rather, she's attractive in a different way. And I've found people looking at the thumbnails, they really like the girls that look a little bit more down to earth. They look more approachable. They look more real. They look more honest. They look more like somebody that you'd actually want to have as a mate. And that's really the essence of the story, is that the girl next door is the better mate. She's the better choice versus the more explicitly sexual character. So thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you want to see in here in the future. I'll see you guys next time. Newest book is called Tyrant's Gallow. It is a sequel, though. So if you're going to get Tyrant's Gallow, you should probably read City of Silver first. So this one is only 99 cents for the ebook on Amazon. This one is $2.99, and it's a bigger, thicker book. So check those out, and I will see you guys next time.